What? What are you looking at? Totally normal being here. Human being. Definitely didn't cause that explosion. Well, hello there. I'm back with 6 more custom origins based off of characters from my stories. Unlike my last set of origins, this one has only 6 origins, so it's a bit less. And it focuses less on balance and a little bit more on basically just having superpowers, because that's kind of how it is in the stories. Unlike in my story development series, where there are a whole bunch of different powers, in this story there are basically 2 main power sets, but at different levels. So I'm going to start off by showing the sort of quote-unquote normal level of power and show you all the basics of each one, and then I'm going to go over the differences between the more and the less powerful versions of the 2 sets of powers. So to our first origin, Light Blessed. First off, as a Light Blessed, you're a little bit stronger, faster, and more durable than an ordinary human. Oops, I am in creative mode. If you go into survival mode, you will see that you have a few more hearts, and additionally, you get speed and strength the whole time. Next, you have an ability to shoot a beam of light. Now, if you watched my other video with origins, you may have seen this exact ability before. But in case you hadn't, all you better do is approach a target, hit a keybind, boom, annihilated. But just like the Light Elf's exactly identical beam of light attack, this beam does fire damage, which means that if you try to attack something that's fire resistant, it will not do anything. So our next ability only works in a bright space. If you hit a certain key, you get a quote-unquote light spear, which is kind of just a fancy trident. Now this texture isn't actually part of the Datapack itself. This is just a texture pack that makes all tridents yellow, because that way it actually looks like it's made of light instead of it just being blue. This light spear is just an ordinary trident, and just like a trident, you can use it to throw and do melee damage. But you may have noticed it has a very low durability. That's intentional, so that way you can't just use it infinitely, because it will eventually just run out and you'll have to summon a new one. If you find yourself damaged, you'll appreciate this next ability, which is simply to heal. On a cooldown, of course. If it's your friends who need healing, however, well, you have an ability for that too. You can summon a whole huge circle of regeneration. Yeah, it's kind of gigantic. Now, as a Light Blessed, you have a fun movement-based ability too. You can hit a key to leap forward in the direction you're looking, as if you're getting a boost of light. Now, for our next ability, we're in the night, because you can summon a light block at your location periodically. If you're not familiar with what light blocks are, they're these blocks you can usually only contain in creative that create a light source, but you can't actually interact with the block. If I go into creative mode and I hold this light block, you could see where this otherwise invisible light block is. Now, back in the daytime, we're to our next of the more normal versions of the main 2 power sets, which is Darkness Cursed. Now, much like the Light Blessed, you also have a few extra hearts and a little bit of speed and strength. Also, like the Light Blessed, you have a familiar form of attack. You have a beam of shadow. And I totally missed. But you get the point. It's a beam of shadow that does damage. And unlike the Light Blessed ability, which does fire damage, and so you have to worry about stuff being immune to fire damage, the Shadow Blast does freezing damage, which apparently nothing is immune to. And so you don't have to really worry about what you're shooting. It's going to do damage either way. And speaking of damage, our next ability does damage to a bunch of mobs around you. It's not a lot of damage, as you can see, but it does damage for anything within a radius of, I forget how many blocks it is, but it's a decent radius. And if that wasn't enough damage in a radius for you, well, you can also make an explosion. Yeah, basically like you're a creeper, but you don't actually take damage to the explosion. And if you didn't have enough of explosions, well, you can also explode anything that you happen to be looking at within a distance. Now, an important note that this only works if you look at blocks and not if you look at entities. If you look at entities, it just won't explode. Now, similar to the Light Blast, you can also summon a weapon. In dark spaces, though. And apparently this is not a dark enough space. Now it should be a dark enough space. You can summon a Darkness Sword, which is another right sword, as you can clearly see. It's the most darkness looking one. And much like with the trident, that was the light spear, you'll notice it has very little durability. Again, the point is so that you can't just use this as like your only weapon ever, and you have to actually like re-summon it in order to use it. So now we're gonna be moving on to the different like power levels of the main two powers. I'm gonna save the best two for last, and we're gonna talk about the sort of medium ones first. So first we have a rather boring version, which is half blessed. Now if I take some damage so the hearts reset, you'll notice you only have one more heart of health than a normal player. You'll also see that you don't have any constant status effects. No strength, no speed. You do still have a beam of light attack like the normal strength version. However, it's a lot weaker. Similar to the fully light blessed, you also can heal a bit and have a bit of a regen circle, but both of these are weaker than the full blessed counterpart, which, kind of makes sense. You also have the ability to summon a light block, but it's not quite as bright as the other one. The other one was light level 12, and this one, if we do a quick game mode switch, we can see is only light level 7. So it's still some light, it's just not as much light. Now, this next one gets to be a little bit more exciting than the last one. Because it's double cursed. As you can see, you've got several more hearts than a typical player. And as you probably can also see, you have speed 2 and strength 2 instead of just speed and strength 1. You'll find you also have stronger versions of some pretty familiar attacks. Both your Beam of Shadow, the Totally Missed, Beam of Shadow, and the area damage effect, which as you can see is definitely more powerful than the plain old darkness cursed one. And speaking of more powerful versions of familiar attacks, you can explode even bigger. And of course, similarly, you can explode blocks at a distance that, well, both the distance itself is even bigger, and the explosion also is even bigger. And as is also quite familiar, you too can summon a Darkness Sword. Although you'll notice that this one doesn't just have Curse of Vanishing, it comes with Sharpness 3, and a little bit more durability than the other one. Something else you may have also noticed though is that it's not quite as dark. You have a little bit of night vision as this origin. It's not a full night vision, but if we go into a cave, you can see it's really not quite as dark as it could be. Now, okay, you may have seen enough of repetitive power, so how about something a little new? With this origin, if you're in a dark enough area, you can teleport forwards with what's basically every textured ender pearl. And if you thought that was fun, well, there's a very interesting final power that we have left. You can activate a shield. And when you have this shield, you basically become invulnerable to a set number of attacks. Every time you get hit, you'll notice the little shield bar going down as your shield starts to wear out. But for the time that you have the shield, you're pretty near invulnerable. Now you could toggle the shield off at any time, and it will slowly start to regen, but you may notice it doesn't regen quite as fast as some of the other things. This is done on purpose so that you can't just use it forever to continuously and forever avoid getting hit. Now we're on to our final two origins, which are basically the most powerful versions of each type of origin. So first, we'll start with the Lesson Giver of Light. Now there are multiple things you may have noticed at once. First, you're significantly taller. If we go back to some blocks here, you'll notice that, well, I guess these blocks aren't super clear. Hold on. You'll notice that you're more like 1.5 blocks tall, although you can still fit under 2 block tall doorways and such by hitting the shift key. Now, something else you may have noticed is that you have particles around you. They don't do anything, but they're there. You've also probably noticed just how fast you are. Well, you have, as you may or may not have been able to predict, speed 3, resistance 3, and strength 3 at all times. And of course, back to survival mode. Once this message clears, we can more clearly see that you have 2 full rows of hearts. And if all that wasn't enough perks, you could also just casually fly. And additionally, because of the way that Origins is set up, if you give an Origin creative flight, you also give them immunity to fall damage, so there's that as a bonus, I guess. Now you're once again going to see some familiar powers here, with some powers being the exact same as the normal light list kind of about, but just a little bit stronger. Or maybe more than a little bit, huh? And again, you'll have the same self-heal, although it's basically an entire self-heal. A regen circle, although it's absolutely freaking ginormous. Not to mention it's like regen 4. And finally, you've also got your same light spear, but with more durability and some bonus sharpness 5. Oh yeah, you can also summon a level 15 light block 2, which is basically just fully bright. Yeah, not that interesting. Now, much like the double cursed, you can also make a shield, except this one's of light. And it's a little bit stronger in that it lasts longer. Unlike the double cursed shield, where each shield icon is representative of 2 hits, so you have a total of 14 hits to be shielded from. Each shield for this origin represents 3 hits, so you have a total of 21 hits that you can be shielded from. Also, you have a stronger version of the leap ability of the normal Light Blessed. Point in any direction and launch. Well, leap. A pretty far distance. Back in the cave, you'll notice that you actually have a pretty decently strong version of night vision. It might just be full night vision, I don't actually remember. And it's a bit of a fun thing, but if you don't want it super obvious that you're 1.5 blocks tall and have of the particles, or, well, more likely, you're tired of having to sneak every single time you want to go through a door, well, you can fix this. Just hit one key and just shrink, and you don't have any particles. So they definitely can't tell what origin you have. It's not like you have speed 3 at all times. But you can, wonderfully, fit through a 2-block door without having to sneak. It may seem like not a big deal, but if you explore a lot of structures, especially from certain mods, you'll notice that they're very much made for 2-block tall players, and it's really annoying to have to sneak every single time you want to go through a door. Now we're going to move on to our last origin. Blessing Giver in Darkness. Now much like the Blessing Giver of Light, you've got the same Speed 3, Strength 3, Resistance 3 combo, and you have Particles too, but they're darkness rather than light. You two can also fly into the sky, and similarly, you've also got night vision. And you've got a lot of the same attacks as the Darkness Curse and the Double Darkness Curse, but of course, stronger. You've got your classic Shadow Beam attack. I actually hit it that time, first try. Oh yeah, you may also notice you can shrink too. Boop. Look totally normal human. And you again have the ability to explode everything around you, but it's a little bit bigger than just like a TNT block. And of course, similarly, you too can explode. A block you're looking at some distance away. Oh yeah, you will get damage from those, so make sure you don't stand so close. You've also got an ability to damage everything within a 30 block radius. Pretty hard, I might add. And of course, you've got your Darkness Sword too, with Sharpness 5. So it's basically like Sharpness 5 down the right sword for free, except it's only got 30 hits left in it. It's also got Curse of Vanishing, so you can't disenchant it and then put it in an enchanter. It is also set up in such a way that you can't put a bending book on it because it will say too expensive. I mean, technically, so basically your only option is if you really wanted to, you could technically stick enough of these in the crafting grid and they would lose their enchantments and they're too expensive, warning. And then you could technically make infinite netherite swords, but pretend that doesn't exist. Similarly to the double darkness curse, you can teleport forwards. Boom. You also, once again, have the ability to make a shield. And just like with the Blessing Giver of Light, this gives you 21 hits of invincibility. Alright, so that's all the origins with this one. If you've watched my Story of Elma's origins, you may notice that these ones are not quite as interesting because there's a little bit more overlap between the different kinds, since it's basically just different power levels of 2 origins, with only a few, actually new powers between them. This one's definitely less expansive, but I still enjoyed making it, and I still wanted to make a video to show it off. If you had any interest in playing with these origins, you can. Well, if you have Java, Minecraft that is. These origins are a data pack made for Minecraft Java 1.20.1, and it requires a few mods. The Origins mod, which is kind of probably pretty obvious. The Extra Origins mod, Pekui, or however you pronounce the one that's like P-E-H-K-U-I, Origins Extra Keybinds, because you got way too many abilities to fit them all into 2 keys. And that's it. I'll leave a link in the description where you can download this data pack and the texture pack for the yellow trident too. If you enjoyed this video, you might enjoy my video that has 13 actually unique origins based on my Story of Elma story series. Now it definitely has worse microphone quality too. Yeah, if you watched the video, thank you very much for watching. And maybe, if you want to, consider liking or commenting or subscribing. I might make more origin things in the future. I'm not completely sure. But yeah.